Growing up in apartheid South Africa, I often felt like I didn't quite belong. As a mixed-race child, just being alive in that time and place was against the law. Time, culture, and place help explain how things happen and why people act a certain way. Time is the period or era something happens in, which affects how people think and what technology they use. Culture includes the traditions, beliefs, and customs of a group, which influence how they see the world and behave. Place is where something happens, affecting the climate, resources, and local traditions. Altogether, these factors help us understand people's experiences and how societies develop. This documentary tells the story of my childhood, showing both the tough times and the happy moments. It looks at how racism shaped who I am, but also how it made me love telling jokes and stories. The main idea of the documentary is that hard times can teach us important lessons and help us see the world in new ways. I want people to understand how laughter can come from pain and how knowing our stories can help us connect with others. I hope my journey shows that accepting our differences can make us stronger, help create a better future for everyone. I was born in 1984 in South Africa, at a time when the country was controlled by apartheid. Apartheid was a system that made life really unfair for many people based on their skin color. It was like a rule book for racism, where white people had special rights for everyone else, like black and mixed race people were treated badly. My mom was black and my dad was white, and because of the apartheid, they weren't allowed to be together. Their relationship was illegal, so was I. Just being born was a crime. To understand this better, you need to know a little bit about the apartheid. It started in 1948 and lasted for a long time until 1994. It divided South Africa into different racial groups and said that people from different groups couldn't mix. There were laws that told you where you could live, where you could go to school, and even who you could marry, all based on your race. If you were black or mixed race, your life was controlled and limited. It wasn't just a few bad laws, it was a whole system that shaped everything. The goal of the apartheid was to make South Africa a white country. Many people worked hard to change this, and their actions inspired me. Nelson Mandela is the most famous person from this time. He spent many years in prison for fighting against apartheid, but eventually became the president and helped end the system. These events and the people fighting for change led to the end of the apartheid in 1994. Just 10 years after I was born, the people who shaped my life the most were my mom and my dad. My mom, Patricia, was strong and brave. She made sure I knew education and knowledge were keys to making things better and the world around me better. My dad, Robert, was white, so he had a different experience of the world. Even though he wasn't around all the time, he also made sure to keep up with my life. He gave me a different way to see things, helping me understand the racial lines that divided us. Growing up, I lived in a world where I didn't fit anywhere. I moved between black neighborhoods and white areas, feeling like an outsider in both places. You can't just be black. You have to pick a group. You have to decide who you're going to be with. This confusion made me realize how unfair it was that people were judged by their color of their skin. Humor and storytelling became the ways I dealt with this. It was how I tried to make sense of the world, to laugh at the crazy rules that didn't make sense. Growing up, I lived in a place called Soweto, a township that was full of life, music, and a mix of cultures. It was a bit rough, but it was my home. My mom was a really strong person. She taught me to be brave and always stand up for what I believe is right. I often watched her fight against the unfairness around us. She didn't want to survive. She wanted to thrive and help others do the same. Living in Soweto meant that I was surrounded by different cultures and languages. I learned how to speak Xhosa, English, and some Afrikaans. I would switch languages depending on who I was talking to. This helped me make friends with kids from different backgrounds, and it really helped me fit in. I didn't really feel like I fit in with any racial group since I was white and black. But if I were to really choose one group I felt most comfortable with, it would be the black kids, because that's where I was truly able to be myself. If I were to think who my idol was, it would have to have been my mom. She always taught me the importance of education and encouraged me to stand up for what is right. I loved my mom. It also felt like it was me and her against the world, even when she would whoop me for getting into trouble. I was a little troublemaker. I would always get myself into trouble. I remember the time I asked my mom for chocolate in the grocery store. Once we got to the checkout line, she acted like she didn't know me because I was mixed and she was black, and everyone in the store started giving me stares. And that's when I learned my lesson about annoying my mom in public. And I learned she doesn't play. A million things had to go right for us to slip through the cracks the way we did for as long as we did. One important lesson I learned is that laughter can help us get through tough times when there are moments of sadness, like when my friends and I would hear about violence happening in our neighborhoods. But even then, we would find ways to smile and lift each other's spirits up. My mom always told me, "You can make the best out of any situation." That stuck with me. In those years, I saw how culture played a big role in my life. It shaped the way I understood the world around me and realized the power of the community. We had to stick together, especially during hard times. Through laughter, friendship, and my mom's strength, I learned that even in a complicated world, we can find moments of joy and hope. So reflecting on my time and growing up in Soweto, I see how my experiences have shaped who I am today. I lived in many different locations throughout my life, and I feel this location best represents how I am as a person now. I'm proud of my roots and my culture, and I know my mom's teachings will always guide me in life. After Nelson Mandela was released from prison, South Africa began change quickly. I remember excitement everywhere. People were dancing in the streets, celebrating like it was New Year's Eve. Immediately, everyone started talking about how the apartheid was coming to an end, and new laws were being made to promote fairness. It was like waking up from a bad dream, and we could see hope. One of the first changes to be implemented was the law that allowed all races to vote. That was a huge deal because it felt like everyone was finally being heard, no matter their skin color. My friends and I were just kids, but we could see how our parents felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. We all started thinking differently too. No longer did we need to hide. We could be proud of who we were. The people who were affected the most were those who had suffered from the apartheid, like my family and I, who were ripped apart. We couldn't even walk together as a family in public. My family were all different races, so the apartheid impacted me greatly. It was hard not being able to really have a father because of a stupid law. In the long term, the world had become a much different place. South Africa started to slowly heal from its dark path. Apartheid's influenced other countries too. It inspired movements for rights around the world. People began to look at what happened in South Africa and realize that change is possible. However, even with excitement, there were still struggles. Not all changes happened overnight. Some people resisted and challenges remained. There were unintended consequences, like the fact that while some people were celebrating, others felt disappointed things weren't changing fast enough. Even for me, I didn't feel changes until I was older. The release of Nelson Mandela and the changes that followed were like a powerful wave of hope. It taught me, even as a kid, that while things may seem tough, while challenge might be slow and messy, you can always strive for a better future if you believe in it and work together with others. Born a Crime is my story of growing up in South Africa during the apartheid, and how growing up through this tough time period helped shape who I am today. My main point is that being mixed race in a divided country, having a strong mom who taught me important lessons, and using humor to get through hard times all played a huge part in my life. Of course, there are a lot of events that shaped my life, not just growing up in the apartheid, but I would say the apartheid affected my culture the most. Because of this tough period I was born in, I never felt like I fit in with any other race because I was mixed. This led to a lot of life lessons and also led me to get into a lot of trouble. The biggest thing I want you to take away is that even though the apartheid was unfair and hurt a lot of people like me, I do not know where I'd be without it. The people I met and the lessons I learned from the apartheid helped me survive and become the person I am now. This story is important because it shows how history can affect individuals and why it is still important to fight for equality and justice today.